Two Asus Zenbook Duo laptops. Here, the 2024 model with Meteor Lake, that's the Core Ultra 9 185H. Here, the brand new 2026 model with Intel Core Ultra X9388H, which is Panther Lake. Internally, these two laptops are fairly different to each other, but just look at the exteriors. They both sport two 14-inch OLED screens. However, the 2024 and 2025 models, effectively they tacked the second screen on top, and the hinge is quite an obvious piece of engineering. Whereas the new 2026 model, all the hardware appears to have vanished. While it's not quite seamless, the separation between the two screens is significantly reduced, and you can see the difference in height between the two laptops, despite the fact, as I say, they each have two 14-inch panels. So let's dig in and take a closer look at this Zenbook Duo 2026. This Asus Zenbook Duo was sent to us by Intel. Its model code is the UX8407A, hereafter referred to as the Zenbook Duo 2026 because they've been making them for a few years. The reason Intel sent us this laptop is because it packs their new Panther Lake processor, which is the Core Ultra X9388H, another catchy name. But the laptop itself is really interesting. And what is it, you might wonder, that makes this laptop a Duo rather than the regular Zenbook? Let's flip out the kickstand and remove the keyboard. Duo, two 14-inch OLED screens. Now this is very clever for a number of reasons, but to cover the basics, it means the laptop is relatively chunky. It weighs in at 1.7 kilos, and you need to add another half a kilo for the charger. And to put things in context, a conventional Zenbook, this is a Lunar Lake, which is Core Ultra 200 series. As you can see, substantially thinner. This weighs 1.2 kilos, and it is indeed sylph-like and lovely, which is why I bought it. But returning to this laptop, if we take the keyboard off the lower screen, which then bursts into life, and I close the lid carefully, you'll note there's a gap because, of course, it's not closing on the keyboard. I'm not at all sure you're supposed to carry the laptop around without the keyboard in place. Feels to me like damage might be done. You can't open the laptop in an A shape. It doesn't arch back beyond the flat. When I lay it down, what it's doing is it's popping up with sharing mode. And that's this completely unique mode where the two screens are one going that way, one going this way. The idea is that I'm doing a PowerPoint presentation or something sales related, and you sit on that side of the table with your important cup of coffee. I sit on this side and I can show you the presentation. You haven't got to sit beside me and we don't get our cups of coffee mixed up. This is a unique feature in my view. So you carry the Zenbook Duo around like so, and if you wish to reveal the second screen, you remove the keyboard. The keyboard connects via the pogo pins on the front lower edge, connecting there, and that charges the Bluetooth keyboard, which is incredibly slender. If you need, you can connect a Type-C to it to power it should it run flat. You've got two screens, and that of course means you can extend your screen upwards. You can have a secondary screen above or below your primary screen. I think if I was editing videos, I'd likely want to look at that screen, have my media library there. Right, we come out of sharing mode, we put the screen down. Behold, it flips. Now you will note all the icons are on the right hand screen rather than left hand screen. There's an awful lot of permutations with this laptop, and things like that can get a bit, I was going to say annoying, that's a bit harsh because it's a unique product. You have to learn its quirks. Let's put the laptop the other way up. There we go. So you need to actually understand which is the primary screen and which is the secondary screen. Secondary screen has the kickstand attached. Primary screen is t'other one. Flip it over. It works, but it's wrong. You won't be surprised to learn there are one or two quirks of this design. So for example, the power button, which in previous Zenbook Duos was a hardware button here, has now been moved because the idea is it's a seamless dual screen experience, no space for buttons. As a result, the power button is there, and I've found it to be somewhat fiddly. You have to very carefully push your fingertip or fingernail at it, and then a light comes on, you know it's all good. Also, we don't have very many ports and connectors. You've got cooling vents there and there, which doesn't leave a lot of space for anything else. We've got HDMI, Thunderbolt 4, headset jack, got a USB-A, another Thunderbolt 4, and the power button. It's not a case of me complaining about the ports and connectors, there simply isn't very much space. If you are a USB port junkie, then you're going to need some sort of hub. But with Thunderbolt, that's no problem. Also, of course, these days, Wi-Fi. And what is the deal with the hardware inside this laptop? The processor is an Intel Core Ultra X9388H. That means it has 4 P cores, 8 E cores and 4 LP cores for a total of 16 threads. The graphics are Intel Arc B390 and it has 32 gigabytes of LPDDR5X, which is rated at 9600 mega transfers. I did a trip last year with Intel to their fab in Arizona where they talked about their 18A process. The key points are that the CPU parts of Panther Lake use Intel's 18A process. The graphics are slightly more complicated because there are two versions. The baby 4xe version is made by Intel, whereas the big boy with 12xe3 cores uses a TSMC process. So Intel can indeed proudly claim that Panther Lake is at least partially made in the USA. The smart move is for you to pause this video, go away and look at that previous video about Intel 18A and Panther Lake, and then once you've caught up, press play again and we can talk about benchmark results. We're starting with Geekbench 6 CPU multi-core. Top of the chart, it's the new Zenbook Duo 2026 running on charger. It scores a couple of 100 points more than the HP ZBook Ultra G1A, and that's good going because the Ryzen AI Max is a beast of a processor. So this chart gives us a lot of hope about the Intel Core Ultra X9388H. To put these figures in context, we're looking here at a range of historic data about desktop processors. The blue bars are all the laptops that we're using in this particular review. As you can see, they fall towards the bottom part of the chart. However, they're running on much less power than those desktop processors. For example, the Zenbook Duo is running on 40 watts, where just above it we have the Core i5-14600K running on 180 watts. Panther Lake both performs and is impressively efficient. Moving on to Geekbench 6 single core, the chart is again topped by the Zenbook Duo with the Ultra X9388H, again running on charger. Interesting to note that the second blue bar, which is the on battery figure, is only about 10% lower. Cinebench 2026 multi-core. Top of the chart, it's the HP ZBook with the Ryzen AI Max. You'll notice here we have the on charger figure where it pulls 60 watts, and in second place the on battery figure with 40 watts. We have some very curious stuff going on with the Zenbook Duo, where the first of the two blue bars is running on battery and the second figure is on charger. The scores are essentially identical, but according to our monitoring software, the higher figure is achieved on battery with lower power. Clearly this is a bit of a conundrum. In essence, on battery and on charger makes no odds to the Zenbook Duo. We take those Cinebench 2026 scores and we divide them by the power required by the processor, and the result is a figure that indicates efficiency. At the top of the chart we have the Zenbook Duo. The score was perfectly decent and the power draw is only 28 watts. As you can see, the figure running on charger is further down the chart because it essentially required 40 watts to do the same amount of work. Cinebench 2026 single core. Somewhat surprised to see the two blue bars for the Zenbook Duo are lower in the chart than we expected. Cinebench 2024 multi multi-core. Top of the chart, it's the HP Zenbook Ultra G1A, and behind that we have the Zenbook Duo with Panther Lake. Cinebench 2024 single core. It's interesting to see that Cinebench 2024 gives quite different results to Cinebench 2026, and in this test the Zenbook Duo with Panther Lake is at the top of the chart. Cinebench R23 multi-core is now an older test, but as expected, the top of the chart is the HP Zenbook with AMD Strix Halo, and behind that we have the Zenbook Duo with Panther Lake. Again, the battery figure is higher than the charger figure, although they're very similar, and again we note this curiosity, but we don't yet fully understand it. Cinebench R23 single core, top of the chart it's the Zenbook Duo with the Core Ultra X9388H. The figure on battery is second from the bottom and is about 20% lower than the figure on charger. 7-zip version 25 benchmark. Top of the chart by a clear margin, it's the HP Zenbook Ultra G1A, and in second place once again it's the Asus Zenbook Duo with Panther Lake. Ada 64 memory bandwidth. Top of the chart it's the HP Zenbook for very good reason, because it has a quad channel memory controller. In second place we have the Zenbook Duo, which is dual channel but runs monstrously fast LPDDR5X 9600. The other laptops then trail behind. And let's look at some games, starting with Assassin's Creed Mirage. Resolution is 1280 by 800, i.e. fairly low, and the preset is ultra high image quality. We can see a typical laptop such as the VivoBook with the Ryzen AI 7 350 manages a mere 32 frames per second. The Zenbook S with Core Ultra 7258V does better at 40 FPS. However, the Zenbook Duo with Panther Lake steps up to 60 FPS. These figures are crushed by the mighty HP Zenbook with AMD Strix Halo, which runs up to 89 FPS, but as a conventional laptop the Zenbook Duo with Panther Lake is doing incredibly well. We increase the resolution to 1920 by 1200 and we can see the impact. The junior laptops now drop down to 30 FPS or below. The Zenbook Duo with Panther Lake is running at 45 or 46 FPS, and even the HP Zenbook is struggling with its 1% low figures. Turning on FrameGen gives a significant boost. We now see the Zenbook Duo running at 63 or 64 FPS, and the HP Zenbook manages 93 FPS. Increasing the resolution to 2880 by 1800 is a very stiff test, and we see the Zenbook Duo with Panther Lake running at 29 and 30 FPS. Turning on FrameGen lifts the frame rate to 47 FPS, which is a testament to Intel's 12 by Xe3 graphics. For our second game, which is Far Cry 6, we're using the Ultra Image Quality preset. We start at 1280 by 800 with Fidelity FX disabled, and we see the Zenbook Duo with Panther Lake running at 83 or 87 FPS. Returning to our previous theme, the higher figure is on battery, which is decidedly curious. Enabling the FSR performance mode boosts the frame rate significantly. We're seeing 113 FPS on average, with slightly higher 1% lows on battery than on mains charger. Stepping up to 1920 by 1200 with FSR enabled, the frame rate drops slightly but is still very impressive, and holy moly, at 2080 by 1800 with FSR we're still at 70 or 73 FPS on average. Our third game is Cyberpunk 2077. We're starting at 1280 by 800 with XeSS turned off, and we can see on battery the laptop does very well, averaging 60 FPS, and is slightly better on charger at 65 FPS. Upping the resolution to 1920 by 1200 naturally hurts performance. We're now running at 34 and 37 FPS, which is no good for gaming. However, with XeSS enabled, we're now running around 60 FPS, specifically on battery 56 on average and 61 on charger. And while this delivers a good gaming experience, with FrameGen enabled, we see a huge surge in performance. On charger we're running at 103 FPS on average, and on battery we can still get 87 FPS on average. Increasing the resolution to full screen 2880 by 1800 and turning off all the image enhancements is brutal. The average now drops to 16 or 15 FPS, which is clearly unplayable. Enabling enabling XeSS helps at this resolution, but it's still not great. On battery we're seeing 32 FPS on average, and on charger 37 FPS. But enabling XeSS frame generation almost does the job. On battery we see an average of 52 FPS, but the 1% lows are only 20, and on charger we've got 60 FPS on average, but the lows are 24. Cyberpunk 2880 by 1800 is out of reach. And we finish with the battery test in PC Mark X. The Zenbook Duo of Panther Lake scores an absolutely monumental 1428 minutes, a fraction under a full 24 hours. And this puts the new Zenbook Duo many hours ahead of the other laptops. You will have noticed I've not shown you inside the new Zenbook Duo, and that's for good reason. There are very few of these laptops around at the moment, and getting inside is complicated. You remove the kickstand, a few screws. You can take off this access hatch which shows you the SSD. However, to get inside the laptop properly, as I understand it, requires that you pull the OLED screens out of the shell, a bit like a giant mobile phone, and I don't fancy doing that. And I'm sad that I couldn't do that, because that would have revealed that behind each of the panels there's a battery. This laptop has 2 batteries, and I think that might possibly explain the peculiar behaviour that I saw when I was benchmarking this laptop. Here's the thing, this charger is rated at 100 watts, it says so on the charger. When I was benchmarking the laptop on battery, I saw momentary blips under boost to 110 watts on occasion. It wasn't consistent, it was occasional. And I have to wonder whether Asus has done something clever, teaming up the 2 batteries to allow it to actually boost more on battery than it does on the 100 watt charger. In other words, the 100 watt charger might be acting as some kind of limitation. That's far from a definite theory, it's merely a passing thought. But when I asked Asus over in Taiwan what's going on with this laptop, I got back a "that seems very curious" kind of response, but I didn't get the immediate "you're a blithering fool, do it again, you've messed it up." So there's something going on. So I haven't shown you inside the laptop, and neither have I yet discussed the touchpad, which is excellent, or the keyboard, which, considering it's this very thin Bluetooth keyboard, might be a bit suspect. It's actually perfectly decent. And those screens, it's worth reiterating, are blooming amazing. So let's get to my pros and cons of the Zenbook Duo 2026. Pros, the good points. The dual OLED screens are lovely. Second, it has epic battery life. Third, the graphics in this particular version of Panther Lake are really good. And fourth, the CPU is pretty good. Cons, the negatives. It's slightly too heavy and chunky for my taste. It is a bit of a thick boy. Secondly, the price. It's £2,500, penny under. When this laptop was first listed, it was £2,300. We know the world is in turmoil with the cost of components and memory in particular, so it's not a shock that it's expensive, but £2,500 is a lot. And third, the ports and connectors are rather close together and you don't get an SD card reader. Connecting a device to the Type A port, for example, can easily overshadow the Thunderbolt that's next to it. Overall, I like this laptop a great deal. I recommend you head over to kitguru.net to read the full review, and don't forget we're on TikTok. I'm giving this laptop an 8.5 out of 10 and a worth buying.